Hello friends, welcome to Read Through the Word. Today is September 13th. It's definitely fall here. I'm in the northern part of the country, so we're in the 60s. The weather has changed. I hope you're having a super good day. And I don't know if you're enjoying fall where you are. I'm not sure what the weather is like by you, but welcome. So glad that you are here today. Today, the lesson is called True Power. The verse that we're going to focus on is Zechariah 9:9. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout in triumph, daughter Jerusalem. Look, your king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So we're going to talk about some connections and contrasts today. Zechariah 9:9, we know, is a Messianic verse. It's referring to the coming Messiah. I'm going to be focusing on the reading, the section between Zechariah 9 verse 9 through Zechariah 10 verse 5. So again, 9:9 is a Messianic verse. 10:4 is also considered a Messianic verse. We're going to be focusing more on 9:9, but I just wanted to mention that. So in this teaching today from Zechariah 9:9 to 10:5, there's this messianic prophecy, but it's in the context of something that's really different. That very much contrasts it. So let's take a look. Let's dissect this a bit. As we know, as we just read in 9:9, it talks about the coming, the coming king having salvation, riding on a donkey. And in verse 10, it says, I will take away the chariots from Ephraim and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Talking about the Euphrates River there. So this beautiful picture of peace, humility, peace, right? Gentleness. And then what's interesting is just a few verses later within this context, it's talking about something totally different. For example, 9:13, just a few verses down, I will bend Judah as I bend my bow, and I will fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your sons, O Zion, against your sons, O Greece, and make you like a warrior's sword. That's referring to a conflict that's going to be fulfilled. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then chapter 10, verse 3, my anger burns against the shepherd. I will punish the leaders, for the Lord Almighty will care for his flock, the house of Judah, and make them like a proud horse in battle. That's a really different picture from just a couple verses before. This gentle, peaceful king riding on a donkey. And then in 10 verse 5, it says, together they will be like mighty men trampling the muddy streets in battle. Because the Lord is with them, they will fight and overthrow the horsemen. What a contrast. This verse about this gentle, humble king riding on a donkey. And then these verses about war, and it's saying, I will take away the war horses. And now these verses are saying, I will make Judah like a proud horse in battle. Super interesting distinction. Let's talk about this. And just a note and a reminder for us too, when we're reading prophecy, it's not like, it's not all exactly in order, meaning, we know that sometimes a prophet could be talking about something that's going to happen in the near future or the distant future or the way, way distant future. And sometimes what the prophet talks about in one sentence, the next sentence they could be talking about a different time period. So like this is going to happen in the near future, but then the next verse is about something like in that day sometimes it's prefaced with that sometimes. And then suddenly they're talking about something in the very, very far future. So we know that about prophecy. So it's good to remember that as we think about these verses. Also important to remember too, as I was researching for this lesson, I think I looked at about 10 different commentaries and multiple different sources. It's always good to get a well-rounded, just sort of a variety of good sources to research and to look at. Because there's no one commentary, no one person, no one theologian who has like the corner market on all interpretation of the Bible. And we know that, right? Because we're humans. So just a reminder to, for us to be digging into all different kinds and varieties of sources, because then we're getting a fuller picture. We're getting maybe one interpretation here, but maybe a different perspective here, not necessarily conflicting, just somewhat different. One that maybe adds to the other or sheds light on the other one. So to be good students of this book, we really have to, I think, expand our horizons in our sources. All right, so let's dig back into this strange contrast here. Obviously, as we talked about, the contrast is that this verse 9:9, chapter 9, verse 9, is talking about the coming Messiah, right? That's going to be fulfilled in the New Testament. And then the other verses are referring to a different time period in history. And the reference in chapter 9, verse 13, says, I will bend Judah as my bow, fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your sons, O Zion. So that's Israel. Against your sons, O Greece. That's the Seleucids, okay? And Zion also means the Maccabees in this. And make you like a warrior's sword. So this verse here is referring to the coming conflict that will happen in the 2nd century BC, that will happen after this is prophesied between the Maccabees and the Seleucids of Syria, or the Greeks. And also, verse 10:5, together they will be like mighty men trampling the muddy streets in battle. Because the Lord is with them, they will fight and overthrow the horsemen. That verse is also partly fulfilled in the Maccabean victory during the 2nd century BC. Let's talk about that a minute. During the intertestamental period, or the Second Temple period, in 332 BC, Alexander the Great overtook Judah. He died in 323 BC. His generals competed for control. Israel then existed under the Egyptian Ptolemies from 302 to 200 BC. And then under Syrian Seleucid control from 200 to 152 BC. Antiochus III ruled, and he allowed for high priests to kind of have, their own jurisdiction. But then Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus IV, came to power, and he tried to reorganize Jerusalem as a Greek city. And as we know, he was awful. He prohibited Jewish sacrifices, set up an altar to Zeus in the temple. They put pig guts throughout the temple and on the altar, so completely defiled the Jewish temple. And this incited the Maccabean revolt, which began in 167 BC. If you want to read more about that, it's just, I love this story. It's a fascinating story. It started in 167 BC. It continued. They ended up being victorious and cleansed the temple. One of the links that I'm going to put in the notes today talks about how they took the stones, they dismantled the stones from the altar and put them, I think, in Solomon's colonnade and built a new altar because the stones were, so defiled, right? And they rededicated the temple after this victory and celebrated an event that Jewish people still celebrate today called Hanukkah. By the way, I don't know if you've ever celebrated Hanukkah, but my three girls and I do this every year, and it's a beautiful celebration. We've learned some Jewish prayers and songs, and we follow some of the and we follow the days of Hanukkah and light the candles. It's just a beautiful picture. It's just a beautiful picture of the light, of light over the darkness. So these verses, as I just said, that were predicting events that were partially fulfilled with this Maccabean victory, all right? These verses are written right after this prophecy about a coming king who is gentle and riding on a donkey. So, in Zechariah, there's a contrast and connection. Coming king, and also, the prophecy for a coming king, also the prophecy for a conflict, a fight that's going to happen. Those two things are connected in Zechariah, and they're also connected in the New Testament. And again, I mentioned I'm going to put a link in the comments to Ray Vander Laan, who I sometimes reference. It's a teaching that he gave about the triumphal entry. It's long. It's over an hour, and it's like a fire hose of information, but it's a beautiful teaching of the Jewish context and history and culture that really gives so much meaning to what we read in the Bible regarding this event. So we have in Zechariah, right? These prophecies, and they're within the same, they're within the kind of the same context as each other. Now let's talk about the triumphal entry in the New Testament. Jesus coming into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. This prophecy, Zechariah 9:9, is fulfilled. And palm branches were used, as we know, when Jesus was coming into Jerusalem. Let's talk about palm branches for a minute. They were used in the festival called Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles. And the use of these palm branches, the meaning behind them sort of evolved over time. For example, when King Solomon dedicated the temple in 1 Kings 8:35 and 36, he talks about, Lord, hear our prayer and send rain. So he talks a little bit about that. And so there was this connection made with the palm branches, that they would pray for rain, and they even sounded like rain when they shook them. So now there was this also connection made where they would wave the palm branches and say, Hoshana, Lord save us. But the connection was, Lord save us by bringing rain. So Hoshana, pray for us, bring us rain. So that was kind of a new meaning. And then, during the defilement of the temple by Antiochus IV, the Jews could not celebrate Sukkot. So they had to wait until the temple was rededicated and cleansed, and then they celebrated Sukkot. And what did they do? As usual, they waved their palm branches and shouted, Hoshana, Lord save us. But this time, the meaning of the palm branches began to evolve again into something different. In the minds of these Jewish people, it was a symbol of military and political victory. Lord, save us in battle. Almost like a war cry. So the peace of the Messiah coming in to Jerusalem on the donkey, the fulfillment of Zechariah 9:9. The people waving palm branches, shouting, Hoshana, Lord save us, was a battle cry to overthrow the Romans. And that's connected to the fulfillment of the Maccabean conflict, also in Zechariah 9 and 10. So the connection between these two things are seen here in Zechariah and here in the New Testament. And when Jesus came in on a donkey, I know we talked about this in the Old Testament when Absalom tried to take the kingship away from David, that he was riding on a donkey or a mule. The mule was like a princely mount. David and his sons rode on a mule. Jesus was, make no mistake, Jesus was saying, I'm royalty, right? He was coming in on a donkey, and it was a symbol of royalty, and the people absolutely understood that. What they didn't understand is the kind of king he would be. He would not be the king that was going to overthrow the Romans. He would be a king of peace. And it's an amazing connection, both in Old and New Testament, to think about. The picture that's being painted of the king of peace, the prince of peace, is coming. And we're no longer this conflict, this fighting, this let's overthrow by political might. Jesus is saying, that's not what I came for. We need to flip the script here. His power wasn't in armies or politics or politicians. He was on a path where he gave his life. They were thinking overthrow. Jesus was thinking, I'm going to give my life. And we think about that kind of power, the power of Jesus giving his life, of giving of himself each and every day to the people that he taught and the people that he spent time with. The power of 5 minutes of spending time with Jesus will yield more transformation than years of any political movement. What Jesus was accomplishing on that donkey that day, it was like saying, you don't need to revolt anymore. You don't need to fight. You don't need to set up some big political movement. I am coming to you humble and gentle and in peace. And I'm giving my life because I love my people. And I'm giving my life so that my people will always be with me. The power of Jesus and the power of the love of Jesus transforms us 100 times more, incomparably more, than any political movement. What a beautiful promise. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.